Huge thanks to OK Jazzy. They're your go-to for the 2026 World Cup and an incredible retro archive. They've got decades of iconic league classics, from legendary 90s designs to the rarest club heritage kits. Whether it's a high-performance player version or a timeless vintage look, prices start at just £15, 4.5 Trustpilot rating and fast shipping. Use code Chris for 8% off and grab your piece of football history now.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat Podcast. In today's edition, we'll be talking about Tottenham's game in New Zealand, our second pre-season friendly. My name is Chris Cowlin and we are live from Auckland. Now, we are live on YouTube, X and Facebook. Please do get involved. Let us know how you are feeling about our second pre-season friendly. Of course, Spurs beat Auckland at 2-0. Now, all of these episodes are also available on all major audio platforms. Today, I'm joined by three very special guests: Dustin Lau from Singapore, Blake Derrer from Adelaide, Australia, and Richard Stafford is making his debut on the channel today from Auckland, New Zealand. Now, let's get into it. Spurs 2, Auckland FC 0. Tottenham Hotspur beat New Zealand side Auckland FC on Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning in the United Kingdom. Roberto De Zerbi's winning start to pre-season continued, also winning against MK Dons last week at Hotspur Way behind closed doors. That result, of course, was 1-0. De Zerbi named a very youthful starting 11 today in Auckland. Archie Gray as captain, and a team that included the likes of Dane Scarlett, Mikey Moore and Jamie Donnelly. Scarlett gave Spurs the lead after Manor Solomon's header was kept out. Spurs brought on some experience in the second half, including new signing Matheus Fernandes, Richarlison, Gallagher, Tell and Davis. Two of those subs combined for Tottenham's second goal as Tell raced down the left to find Richarlison, who tapped home. The likes of Mickey van der Ven, Andy Robertson, Sandro Tonali, James Maddison, Dominic Solanke all sat this one out. Spurs are now on their way, literally now, to Australia to play two games in Sydney against Sydney and Chelsea. Now, Blake is with us. Blake, how are you?
I'm really well, Chris. Thanks for having me back on. Obviously, a busy period with the World Cup, following the Socceroos, following England. But it's great to be talking Tottenham again with you guys and an esteemed panel here. Really looking forward to getting into it. Good two first games under RDZ officially in his first full season. But yeah, looking forward to chewing the fat with a great panel.
Well, great to have you here. Thanks, Blake. And also joining us is Dustin, all the way from Singapore. Dustin, how are you?
Yeah, how's everyone? Good to finally be watching a game that's at a normal time for me and a hellish time for everyone else. I think Blake and Richard know exactly what I'm talking about.
Richard is also joining us for the very first time. Richard, great to have you with us. You've been great for me these last few days in New Zealand. Great to meet you yesterday. And I now feel like I've known you my whole life and you're going to probably be a friend for life now. So great to meet you. Great to have you here. And of course, you are only down the road in Auckland, New Zealand.
Indeed. I'm across the harbour, a ferry ride away. It's been fantastic having the club in the country. The excitement has been building now since they came over and announced it in March, I think it was, and Ledley was in the country. So the fervour, one of the things that I think a lot of people got to understand, the same possibly in Singapore, less so in Australia, is there's only 5.4 million people here in New Zealand. 1.6 million live in Auckland, and it's a country the size bigger than the UK. So getting people to converge all in one place, and there were 40,000 people at the stadium today, is just wonderful. And if anybody thinks, you should get at least 65,000 or 70 or 80, which they will in Sydney, it just doesn't happen in this country because we don't have the numbers. But don't ever underestimate the fervency, the loyalty, and the loyalty of Spurs fans here.
Absolutely. Richard, can we just clear something up very quickly? Because yesterday on the news, it said that there was an earthquake here in New Zealand. And I was like, oh, my God. And then you tell me that there are loads. This is just a daily occurrence.
Yeah, the whole country suffers earthquakes on a daily basis. During the course of a year, we'll get 2,500 of them. Most of them are very, very deep, and only people who are of a nervous disposition will ever notice them. But once they get over about 4, then the locale may know about it. Yesterday's was 5.9, and so there were people maybe 100 miles away that might have felt a slight tremble, but we're very much used to it. And of course, when something as tragic as Christchurch happens, then it is truly a bad thing. But we are very used to that. And in fact, Auckland is surrounded by 7 volcanoes, all of which could erupt at any time in theory.
Blake, before I come to you, I just want to mention that Spurs actually arrived yesterday at 2 a.m. and then a couple of hours later, that earthquake actually happened. And then, of course, it was reported. But Spurs now are on their way to Australia. So they've actually been in New Zealand for less than 48 hours. And I tell you what, I'm here now, day 3 in New Zealand, and the jet lag and the tiredness has really hit me today, as Richard will probably tell you. All the other guys were drinking all day, and I was just trying to drink a Coca-Cola just to try and wake myself up a little bit. But yeah, less than 48 hours the team have been here. Blake, let's start the show with you by asking you your thoughts on the game today, 2-0 against Auckland FC.
Well, I think the fact that it takes 28 hours or so to get to NZ from the UK says enough, and to spend 48 hours in Auckland is a very short turnaround. And obviously getting on the flight to Sydney, I think it takes 4 hours. But that's it was a fantastic outing today, to be honest. And the first couple of games have been really good to watch under Roberto De Zerbi, officially in his first season. I actually really enjoyed that he started with the kids today, to be honest. For those that are tuning in and don't quite understand, the A-League is actually in its off-season at the moment. So Auckland, even though they are the champions of the A-League, and correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, I think they're going into the Oceanic Champions League now as a result of being champions of the A-League. But this is very much their off-season. So our season is October to sort of through to March here down under. So they were probably a little bit underdone in Auckland's defence, but you can only play what you get put out against. And I thought that the youngsters were fantastic. Initial thoughts straight off the bat was Mikey Moore and Matisse Tell were brilliant. The build-up play was excellent. And it's early days, but a couple of really good passes early on when Fernandez came on, opened things up and put the ball in the path of the attackers. So I thought there were really positive signs. There's still a lot to go. I think we've got to do a lot to shore up our front three. But nevertheless, it was a good outing and great to see them down under.
Blake, can I ask you how good Auckland FC are in terms of quality? Because what would you compare them to, say, in the UK?
I would probably say A-League, generally speaking, is probably lower end of championship football. That's probably how I would compare A-League, generally speaking. We obviously are going to play Sydney FC on Wednesday, who were the grand finalists against Auckland. So a little bit different with the A-League with regard to you can finish top and win the minor league title, but then you also go into a final series after that. So it's like a playoff series of which Auckland were champions. So it is pretty good quality. We've had a lot of good players come out of the A-League recently, and most notably in Australian Nestroy Irankunda is about to sign with Sporting Lisbon, I think in the region of £15 million after a great World Cup. So there is quality amongst it. And I think they had a couple of players for New Zealand that were at the World Cup as well. So it is a slightly lower profile, and football is not big in Australia and New Zealand as it is in the UK and Europe. But it was a really, really pleasing display, and great to see someone like Archie Gray take the lead as captain as well, showing his great leadership qualities. There were plenty of positives in today's game as well on both fronts.
Dustin, let's come to you. What did you make of the performance today from Tottenham?
I think it's great to see the kids come out. I think part of it was that after a long flight, you don't necessarily want to risk a lot of the first team, given how you are feeling with the jet lag and everything. So it's probably for the best that we put out a lineup. And I think that it was great to see Luca Williams-Barnett play. I think that there are a bunch of kids that we've heard about and we hear whispers, but it's good to finally see them on the field and how they play together. What I found interesting was that the even the kids are starting to have like a bit of the La Masia vibes, where they seem to be playing with the same style as the first team, because we had seen the first game against MK Dons, we had seen what the build-up play was looking like. And I think that we're getting to the point, maybe we're not quite there yet, but at least we're getting to the point where we are building up from our youth setup such that, you know, they can slot in, because they aren't just trying to win their individual like league. They're actually trying to look at it as, I'm building for the first team and I'm going to play the same style as the first team. And I think that it's great that Roberto De Zerbi actually gets a look at some of these players, because I think we have some talents there that if he doesn't look at them and he doesn't give them a chance, then it would be a shame to lose like Luca Williams-Barnett, for example, or Mikey Moore, or even Olasesi, even though he's injured and didn't come. But, you know, I think that the kind of signings we make at this point will influence what their pathway looks like. If we sign a sensational 24-year-old that blocks Mikey Moore's progress, you might go, yes, but sign the sensational 24-year-old. But then after he ages out, Mikey Moore's already left. Whereas if you sign like a Rafa Leao who's like 27, 28 or something like that, Mikey Moore can look at that and go, I still got a chance. He's not going to stay forever. And I can go on one more loan. I'll be back. Rafa Leao might be aging out. And so I think that there is value in thinking about that in terms of signing. We do have to sign for success now, but, you know, we can still make choices that allow our youth talents to come through.
Dustin, I think it's fair to say after 2 pre-season friendlies, this is all about fitness. This is all about putting minutes in the legs for this squad. You know, he's brought a 35-man squad out to New Zealand and Australia. What are you looking for at this stage after 2 games, and what have you made of the 2 games that we've played?
I think what I'm looking for is kind of like patterns of play and the way that we're looking to build up, because half of last season our pattern of play was lump it long, hope that it gets to Kudus somehow, and Kudus does magic, or if Kudus passes it back to Poro and Poro crosses it and somehow someone scores, or Jet Spence carries it out. So like it was that and long throws and set pieces, right? So I think that after going through that, we just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to see such unimaginative build-up play. And I think with Roberto De Zerbi, we saw hints of what he could do with the 7 games left, but he was also very clear about, I'm doing this to survive. A lot of the players that I play now may not make it into my squad, but, you know, I'm going to G all of them up because I need them to be motivated, right? And we've seen it with, you know, he said, Vicario's my number 1 and I love Paulinia, and, you know, we're not signing them. But he said what he needed to say to get us over the line. And I think what we're seeing now is like, based on the players that he's signing with, you know, the ball playing centre backs and everything, and even the strikers and the wingers that we're looking to sign, we are seeing the stamp of what it looks like when you give him the keys to the kingdom. Whether that's a good idea is a different conversation, but I think that you're seeing the signings are kind of like putting a stamp down to, we want to do this now, and I think that he's gone with Premier League proven and like players that are in their peak, not players that are past their peak or their peak is yet to come.
Richard, I'll come back to you on this subject in a minute, but I just want to get Dustin's take on Spurs travelling to places like New Zealand and Australia, because, of course, Dustin, a couple of pre-seasons ago, I met you in Singapore where Spurs were playing. Of course, met Richard yesterday in New Zealand. Some people do criticise, particularly people from England, saying, why on earth are Spurs doing these types of trips? What are they getting out of these players travelling this distance? But it is very important to people like yourself to see Spurs in your country.
100%. I think that I can understand some of the arguments, which is like, you know, players barely get any rest at all. We just had the World Cup, and some players are back, barely 2-3 weeks after the World Cup. But I think that's a scheduling thing, and it's not the fault of overseas fans. As it is for overseas fans, the only time we get to see Spurs is when we go over to England. As you've just experienced, it's a long flight, and and then even when they go to England, sometimes like, oh yeah, these tourist fans, they don't know the songs, everything. So it can sometimes feel like a second class citizen kind of relationship. So at some level, right, the size of Spurs also matters based on its international fan base, right? So I would say that you have Spurs for the rest of the year, and the off season is actually the only time that fans in the rest of the world get to see them in the flesh, right? Get to sign autographs, get to bring their kids to meet them, and I think that while it does add a lot of miles on the legs and may not be the best for their conditioning, I think it's a connection that the club needs to have with its international fan base, so that they feel that they are along with this journey, even though most of the time it's through a screen.
Richard, let's come to you on that, because we did talk about this yesterday and today. How important is it to you, for someone now lives in New Zealand, that Spurs are here, and like Dustin said there about that connection?
Yeah, I think you wouldn't expect Tottenham to come to New Zealand every year. Right. I think they accepted in a conversation we had at the Legends evening last night that a 50-year gap is too long. And by all accounts, the guys in the marketing and the PR department absolutely loved last night, which was fantastic. I also think that gone are the days where the only supporters of a football team live within a 20-25 mile radius of the ground, which would have been the case in the 50s and 60s and maybe 70s as well. And the reality is that with the ability to travel around the world and choose where you're going to live, that doesn't tarnish your love and respect and loyalty to your club. And we had that discussion, didn't we, about how important football is to people when they go overseas. It's very important that there's a modicum of as it should be in the new country you choose to live in. It shouldn't be, as Dustin just said, it shouldn't be that someone in England thinks of a foreign supporter, and by foreign I don't necessarily mean of a different race at all, but a foreign supporter being a second-class citizen. Because you know what, when we go back to the UK, and most of us are expats, when we go back and we visit the stadium, we spend more money per capita in the shops to get up to date with what everybody else has got in the UK than the person who actually goes to a game week in, week out. So it would be silly for the clubs to believe that they're not getting a return for all this activity. But likewise, we wouldn't expect them to be in New Zealand every year. And you know where Blake is, I mean, we've all travelled from New Zealand to Melbourne twice, to Perth. You've got to bear in mind that Auckland to Perth is a 9-hour flight. You know, that's almost half a way around the world just to get to Perth to watch the West Ham game a couple of years ago. And we were in Sydney in 2016. So we spend a lot of money going to where Spurs are within the region. And I think the club's just beginning to respect that. Like I said earlier, the other problem you've got in this area, in Australia and New Zealand, is, and Blake said it very aptly earlier, you know, football's competing with league, rugby, and AFL, you know, the Australian rules football. And you'd be surprised at the size of the crowds that you get for those compared with the size of the crowds in the A-League. And you asked me the question, what would be a typical or an average crowd in Auckland, who are, you know, for 2 years have probably been the best team in the A-League. And we wouldn't get more than about 26,000 here in Auckland. Now, for AFL football at the MCG, you'll get 80,000 people of a Saturday afternoon game, you know. So we're competing against a number of other sports. The reality is, unless New Zealand, for example, goes from 5.4 million to 20 million, we're not going to increase the revenue share or the per capita share of Spurs supporters in that country. But I do believe they realise that there's a lot of effort going in to get loyalty and people through the standard or the official membership schemes that they run.
Yeah,
Just
sorry
adding
about.
on to sorry, Chris.
Go on, Blake. Go on, go for it.
I was just going to add on to that as well. That like Richard made some really great points about loyalty to the badge and to the club, and I think this is a great testament that it doesn't matter where in the world you are. Like you can follow Tottenham Hotspur, and I think that brand that they're putting out worldwide, and the amount of fans that are in South Korea because of Sonny, and heroes come from everywhere, right? And football is such a global brand, and I think Tottenham do such a good job of making the entire world feel part of it. And you're absolutely right. Like we're competing with so many different codes in Australia and probably New Zealand as well with rugby and whatnot too. So you get 100,000 at the MCG for a grand final, 80,000 during the week. I mean, Chris, you were there for Andrew's tour a couple of years ago at Melbourne at the MCG. It's a colossal stadium, and unfortunately, football doesn't draw big crowds down this way. But it's evident today with the record attendance at Eden Park for Tottenham for a men's match that Spurs is loved worldwide. So there's no doubt about that we're a big club.
Richard, let me come back to you because sorry about all the questions, by the way, in the last couple of days, and I've asked you a lot, and it's been great talking to you. But can you give the listeners and the viewers a bit of a flavour about you guys in New Zealand, about what time you have to get up? Because you are literally getting up 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then you guys, if Spurs have lost, and it has been a poor performance, particularly last year, you guys are then going to work and then going about your daily business.
Yeah, what makes it even worse, Chris, is that often a Sunday game means Monday morning. So that gap between losing a game and playing poorly and being at work a few hours later is very short. And you get absolutely hammered by, especially an Arsenal fan, for example. If Arsenal have done well and Spurs haven't, then you're walking into an absolute cauldron of nonsense. And you have to eat humble pie, and the humble pie has lots of different flavors. So you can argue just how well you played and you're unlucky, or you can say how bent the ref was, or you can say someone should have been sent off, but it doesn't change the result, right? So we will typically watch a game if it's on a Monday morning, anywhere between 1 o'clock in the morning and about 4 o'clock kickoff in the morning. So there'll be some days where you get up at 3:30, make your tea and toast, get into the game, and go straight to work afterwards.
Richard, also, it's been a very busy day for some of the players because Anthony Kinski came to the lunch yesterday and answered questions in front of fans. Some of the players went out to a shopping centre, met fans as well. As you mentioned earlier, Ledley King did a Legends evening with you guys last night. It's been a busy few days here.
Yeah, I think, I think they could have planned it slightly better. I think 40 odd hours in a country where you try and fit in all of those things and do them properly is really hard. It's hard on everyone. It's hard on the supporters. The supporters always want a bit of the teams, especially if they haven't been here very often. But I thought they did relatively well. Like yourself, these guys will be suffering from jet lag. Right, yeah. So they're not going to be at their best. But in particular, if we look at Ledley last night, he was absolutely shattered. His eyes were red. But he as you'll attest, he was on stage for an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. And he never skipped a beat. And I spoke to him very briefly afterwards, and he said, "Look, I could have gone on for another half an hour, but once I'd have stopped, that was it."
Yeah.
Kinski was quite interesting, I thought. It was interesting that they put him up as the player representative, and I thought he answered every question quite honestly. I'm not sure he's done too many of those before. He was lucky, I think, in some ways that he was on stage with another goalkeeper, the Auckland FC goalkeeper, and so they were able to bounce off of each other. I don't think anything he said it was contentious. I think it was all good, positive stuff. One thing something Blake said, I think. It was Dustin. The way we played today, my particular view is that Spurs play better when we're on the front foot and playing at speed. Today, at less than walking pace, the centre backs didn't have a clue. They didn't have an out ball. They didn't know who to pass it to. I thought Jamie Donnelly passed the ball around really well. He reminds me a little bit of what's his name from Crystal Palace, Watson. He actually passed the ball, stroked the ball left and right, and I thought he did quite well. But if we play really that kind of slow, quick, slow stuff, I don't think that suits supporters. It'd be interesting to see if Roberto De Zerbi likes that style, but I can see us coming unstuck, just paying lip service to wanting to play attractive, fast football. But that's what we're good at, and I think that's what I'd like from a supporter's point of view for us to be playing.
Blake, let's come to you. Let's talk about the starting 11 today against Auckland FC. Austin in goal, Archie Gray as captain, Kota Dekai, Solomon, Donnelly, Scarlett, Moore, Kea Matten, Hardy, Williams Barnett and Ty Hall. Subs today, Dubravka, Gallagher, Richarlison, Tell, Fernandez, Davis, Tyrese Hall, Russell Denny, Melia, Yang, Ajayi, Byrne and Tingy. What do you make of the starting 11? Any surprises there for you? And of course, we'll come on to talk about the likes of Fernandez being seen in front of the fans for the very first time, because of course, last week's friendly was behind closed doors. But what do you make of the starting 11 today?
I thought it was pretty good. I'm actually, as I said, to sort of kick things off, I actually really enjoyed that we went with the youth to start off with. It's obviously just arriving in Auckland before that. Everyone's getting off the plane, not feeling overly fresh. But I think it was great that they basically went with all a youth 11, minus, of course, Solomon and Brandon Austin. Takai, I thought was a really big standout. At times, probably a little bit off the pace, but it was a really good call to sort of let him have a run and go from there. I thought Archie Gray was a fantastic leader today in the game. For such a young guy, and he's obviously been touted to take the Spurs captaincy one day, perhaps when he starts hitting his peak. I thought he was excellent. Jamie Donnelly was a big surprise. I mean, there's always been big talk about his game, but I thought exactly as Richard said, he spurted the ball all over the place. He looked fantastic. And I'm trying not to get too carried away with fantastic performances, and I've said it a few times, but there were some really, really good performances. And you can, as I said earlier, you can only play what's put in front of you. The last call out, I reckon, was Manuel Solomon. He really did take me by surprise because I wasn't entirely sure whether Roberto De Zerbi would have him as part of his plans, but maybe there is a sliding doors moment there for him where it's opened and ajar and he can have a go at it. But all in all, it was a pleasing performance for the first 11, and then of course once they got to 60 minutes, some changes did happen. But it was a good starting 11 to begin things.
Blake, like I've said before, the last couple of managers that we've had have probably been quite criticised for them not giving a lot of the youngsters many opportunities, particularly the amount of injuries that we've had in the last couple of seasons. This time now, this pre-season tour, New Zealand, Australia, this is the chance for a lot of these youngsters to say to Roberto De Zerbi, I want game time. This is what I can do.
Well, this is the pathway that we're talking about, isn't it? Because, you're seeing Tonali, Fernandez, Van Heck, Senesi, Dubravka, all these big signings coming through the door. And a lot of young players are probably looking at that thinking, what is the pathway for me here? That we're going for win now players, which I think we've had to do for a very long time. We've eclipsed our record transfer spend twice within 48 hours. But this is your time as a youth player to shine, isn't it? Because someone like a Mikey Moore, who's really gone and gritted his teeth in over the border in Scotland at Rangers, had a fantastic outing as well. So I think you've got to take the most of your opportunities, and this is exactly the stage to do it. I actually will be intrigued to see how he makes the lineup work against Sydney FC. Of course, very similar opponents to Auckland today, being the grand finalists. But all in all, this game and probably Sydney is the chance for youth to come to play and have a look at them holistically. I was kind of surprised to not see Bergvall in there today as well, just because obviously there is a bit of chatter about maybe a transfer, and good to see him that he's still part of the squad, because I would actually really like us to keep a hold of him. But just because he fits that youth profile, I thought he might have made the team today in some capacity, but he might be getting saved for the next one. All in all, I think this is the chance for youth to prove themselves, and they've done it. They did themselves proud today, for sure.
Dustin, let's come to you on the starting 11. Who out of this starting 11 do you see taking their opportunity? Because, of course, we've seen the likes of Jamie Donnelly have a couple of loans. We've seen Manor Solomon go from the football club, and now he's returned, and now he's part of this 35-man squad for these games in New Zealand and Australia. Anyone you can get excited about from this starting 11 today?
From what I've seen, I was quite impressed with Takai's his composure on the ball. As far as Luca Williams-Barnett goes, he basically already looks like a squad player. If not starting 11, at least one of the first changes off the bench. Other than that, from the starting 11, Solomon actually had a surprisingly good game. He had a good start, basically, where he put in a few good crosses under pressure from Auckland, and it was his goal, his shot, right, where Dane Scarlett scored off the rebound. But strangely, after that, his form seemed to drop off a bit. He played a lot better at the start. Then he started getting into positions where he had even more space, and Auckland weren't really pressuring him as he was crossing, and his crossing became worse. So I found that interesting. But he actually did quite well at the start, and I think he was one of the better players in the first half. Luca Williams-Barnett is a great progressive player. I think he played better in the previous game, but he still acquitted himself quite well here. For Mikey Moore, I felt like he didn't have the best decision making. There were times that he could have passed, but he carried instead. There were times that he Lucas Mourad himself into cul-de-sacs. But other than that, I think that it was just great seeing all of these players kind of get minutes in their legs, and for De Zerbi to kind of have a look at them and get their loans right. I think that's the important thing. It's getting the loans right. And I think one of the most important things we can do right now is actually kind of put as much effort in getting the right loans for these players as we do in signing players. Because we've seen what happens and how a player's progression can stall when they go out on a loan that isn't good and their market value drops. And we've seen players that have been on our books for ages and they go somewhere else and do better, right? So I think that it is an important pipeline for us, whether they come into the first team or whether they're sold, because that's profit as well, which allows us to spend more money on players. And the better we do at developing our youth, the better youth team players we can attract. So it's a virtuous cycle and something that we need to focus a lot on. But I would say of all the players in the starting 11, probably Luca Williams-Barnett and Takai looked like they had some value to us, maybe as squad players.
Richard, do you want to add anything about the starting 11? And if I can, I'll add another question here about Manor Solomon. What do you expect will happen with Manor Solomon? Do you think he's been given a fair chance over the last couple of years under multiple different Spurs managers? And also, we could probably talk a little bit about Mikey Moore, because when he's had such a successful loan at a club like Rangers, where he's become a real fan's favourite at Ibrox, he then comes back. And a player who is, expecting game time, wants game time, a very hungry player, is very used to playing very regularly for Rangers, then coming back to Tottenham. Where do you see him fitting in? Do you see him going out on loan again?
Yeah, there were about 4 questions and all of that. And I just want to go back to something Justin said about Solomon. Solomon ended up going down rabbit warrens a little bit, and it's almost like he was trying too hard He's obviously got some pace, and to your point, I think he has been let down by the club. Now, they are going to see more of them than we ever will, and so they will know whether he's got the mentality, the physicality, if you will, and the skill. And today he showed that early on, but then the top 2 inches, I think you call it the Mora moment. He kept running into 3 or 4 players at a time, and with the best will in the world, if you continue to do that, you're going to lose the ball, and the ball's going to come back at you, right? So, and Mattis Tau is guilty of that. He did exactly the same when he came on. He wanted to impress. He probably had the better of the left back or the right back because he swapped wings. But then when he beat the first one, he would run into 2 other defenders. And we were guilty of that last year and the year before. And Solomon seemed to make the same mistake. So the top 2 inches tells you that if you beat the first man, right, and there's a layoff, which there was to Jamie Donnelly on one of those occasions, you don't persevere trying to beat every man in his dog. You offload the ball and see what happens, because that guy is in a better position than you are. The Mikey Moore situation is quite interesting because he's obviously got a taste for men's football, right? And the cauldron that is Ibrox is no better place to actually test your mettle. And today he was, when he played, he took on the right centre back of Auckland, and he got 2 rebounds on 2 different occasions that bounced off of the centre back and straight into his pathway. And he didn't actually deliver a final ball. And then in the second half, he took the ball to the byline, pulled it back, but not to one of our players. Now, if you're going to break through into Premiership first team, you've got to be able to deliver balls when you've beaten your player and you've got the ball at your feet and you've got other players in the box. You can't afford to hit a defender, right? That's so poor. Some of our basic decision making in our skill set has been so poor in recent years. And what I'm looking for from De Zerbi is that he actually tries to simplify what the players do, and not try and beat 10 other players before they get near the goal or side of the goal. Because 9 times out of 10, when they see the goal, they don't shoot either. It's almost like catching number 10 bus. They carry on this wayward position in the box, and they don't shoot. And consequently, we haven't been scoring very many goals. So I think Solomon hasn't been treated well. Would I keep him? I don't know. It depends how successful the recovery of Kudus and Kulusevski is, because I think he could do a job, but I do think along with the periods of time that he's played for the club, he's only got a very, very short window to prove himself. I think Mikey Moore needs to go out again. I think he's got that taste for men's football. I think he's a minor success, and he's been obviously very popular at Ibrox. And something you said a little bit earlier, Blake, I think when these guys go out on loan, they have to go out on loan with a purpose, not as a convenience, right? So we come to the last few days of the transfer window. We haven't made a decision quite what we're going to do with this player or that player. So what we'll do is we'll loan them as convenience because they're out of sight, out of mind for a period of time, and we'll let the recruiters go and track their progress during the course of the season, right? And that's typically what happens, but we don't get reports every day, every week of how they're progressing with what De Zerbi wants them to do. So I think if we're going to loan these guys out, there has to be a purpose. We need almost like a sliding scale on where they are, because otherwise what's going to happen is exactly what has happened with the academy. These guys are going to get forgotten about. They're not going to hit the headlines inside the club, and we're going to have to sell them. And in that respect, if that's the way we're going to go forward, then we're no different than Chelsea.
We have been so poor at loan spells for a lot of our youth players in the past few seasons as well. Yeah. And it's an absolutely spot on observation, Richard, because it cannot be a convenience thing for these young players. It's got to be a purposeful loan, somewhere where they're going to be able to grit their teeth, somewhere that's going to teach them about men's football. And that's the only way to break into a Premier League squad. And you're right, we do have to find a balance between being ruthless, as in moving good quality youth players on where we need to, but then also harvesting and farming these young players to have a pathway for them. So it is a tricky balance, and I think this is where the club has to be very pragmatic when they come into this approach with Roberto De Zerbi, because let's be honest, he's probably not quite thinking anything beyond, say, 3 to 4 seasons. He's thinking about right now. And it's a dangerous game to play if you don't have a director of football that's also balancing the need to hang on to youth that they think is going to be successful. So I think you're absolutely spot on. And I think that these games coming up, and that's why the next two are going to be so intriguing as well, because we don't know exactly where they're going to be after the pre-season tour. Are they going to start making loan spells after they get back to London? And is Kudus and Udogie going to be fit enough to see out a season? Kudus, perhaps. Udogie, I have question marks over. So very interesting times ahead.
I have a follow-on question to that with regards to like kind of youth team system and everything, right? Or rather like loans. Would you regard Vuskovic and Lancashire, for example, as successful development? Because I mean, on one hand, we have Kane who graduates and then becomes our legend, and obviously we want that. But sometimes, their path isn't at the club. So what about when a player does well and clubs make us offers that we can't refuse? Not that we think they're bad players, but, the value that people want to pay us for them is higher than their value to our current setup. Maybe our manager, maybe they don't fit the manager and stuff like that. So would you regard like Vuskovic and Lancashire, for example, going out on permanence as success?
Let me just say, I think that it's very difficult when players go out on loans and have successful loans. They then become very hungry and sometimes very impatient, and they want game time immediately. And they are not willing to wait for Spurs or Roberto De Zerbi to say, wait 6 months or wait next year, you'll get some game time. They want it now. I do get it from a player's point of view. You could talk about Lucas Bergvall, like you touched on there, Blake. So, players just want to play. And it's a difficult one, Dustin, because all of us, we'll talk shortly about the transfer window. All of us will say we want a top quality striker in. But at the same time, a lot of us say we want to see the development side develop and come through to the first team. So the Will Lancashire one, I am a little bit disappointed that Will Lancashire has gone out the door, because he's a very old-fashioned number 9 type, and I don't think a lot of them exist nowadays. Certainly in the Premier League, and what number 9s are out there at the moment, and I think that he will be a Premier League player very, very soon, and he will be a top player in the future.
I think the word disappointed is an apt word, because Lancashire had the physique of an old-fashioned centre forward, as you say. Vuskovic doesn't surprise me that much. I think that, and it's been good business, and I don't like commercialism ruling over the skills of a player and what we might have got out of him. But Lancashire was slightly disappointing, because I think he could have been very, very useful for us to be somewhat different. Now, unless they're looking at Mason Melia and thinking, well, he's actually got it. Now, all the reports out of Ireland, if you listen to what's his name, Kelly, he will tell you that this guy was absolutely ripping it up in Ireland. Yeah. And again, he's another big boy as well. He's not a titch. And we've been missing a statuesque header of the ball. Someone who can use both feet and head. I mean, you look at Harry Kane, archetypal. Why is he so good? Because he can score with his left foot, he can score with his right foot, and he can score with his head. And he honed that by being out on loan with all the different clubs, Millwall, Leicester, Norwich, whoever he was with, And at the end of the day, he came back with all the prerequisite skills to be a really good centre forward. And by all accounts, this Melia has got the same style, same attributes as Kane.
It felt as well really quickly that Lancashire had a bit of that Kane about him, and that's a massive call to make about a young player. But he was that typical old-fashioned number 9, and it felt as though the Vuskovic one I could live with, because he's obviously wanting a first team pathway right away. He's had a really successful loan spell in the Bundesliga, and clubs such as Real Madrid are knocking for him. He wants to be playing first team football. I don't know if he fit the profile of RDZ, to be honest, that kind of central defender that we needed. But as for Will Lancashire, I think there was a pathway there for him at the moment, given our strikers' woes and how hard of a market it is to break into. So it was a disappointing one to lose. I hope we have a really, really good buyback clause in there for him, because, as Chris said, I think he's actually going to be a star Premier League player in the near future.
If I can, and not wishing to cut you off there, but I think also with Vuskovic, he was a victim of circumstance as well. And we've known, I think we've all known, that the Romero saga was going to come to some fruition at this break. The fact is, we're awash with centre backs, and those centre backs are probably good enough for us. Therefore, to have someone who's been out on loan, who hasn't been tried and tested in the Premiership, and no matter what his demands are on playing first team football, I'm sorry, but he has to wait in line. I mean, we lost Alfie Dorrington. Dorrington was a very statuesque, very good player. We've got Ashley Phillips, and no one seems to know what's happening with him, who the guys at Stoke absolutely raved about. And then we got Vuskovic, who we keep getting told is absolutely wonderful, but it's got the turning circle of the Titanic, apparently. So if you've got those kind of non first team attributes, and you're going to get absolutely washed when you play in the first team, then look, getting 50 million or whatever we got for him, I think is probably good business.
Yeah, from what I understand, Richard, I think that the Dorrington deal actually got or fell through. He actually played for our under-21s yesterday, so he's still at the football club as things stand. But watch this space. Can I come back to you and ask you back, Dustin, about what you make of it? Because in the last couple of years, of course, Johan Langer has been heavily, or the club have been heavily driven on data and players for the future, long-term future, I might add. And now, like Blake and like you guys have already said, it is now about Premier League experienced players. So the strategy and the direction seem to have changed.
Oh yeah, 100%. So I think that there's the unspoken thing about the youth setups for most clubs is that realistically, how many players get promoted to the first team? It doesn't happen that often. So a lot of it is the input is a very, very cheap youngster. The cost outlay is running the youth program and everything. These are all amortized over time. And if we find a few gems, we can sell them for a lot of money. So not wanting to sound like an accountant, but basically if it helps PSR, it means we can spend more on the big players. So if the youth team setup doesn't bring us first team players, then the least it can do is give them a good pathway, sell them on, maybe they have good careers, and the best thing we can do is actually the sell-on clauses, the first refusals and things like that, because I think more and more players aren't willing to continuously go out on loan. I don't think you'll have a Harry Kane going out on loan 4 times and then still come back to the club. Most of the time, by their second or third loan, they're like, I want a permanent move. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Because managers that take players on loan, if they play the loan player and block their own youth players' pathways, the fans are on the manager's back. Why are you playing them instead of our youth team? Why are we developing Tottenham's player for them? So realistically, loans are good short term, and maybe an academy player will put up with 1 or 2 loans. But anything beyond that, they want a permanent move for their own career. So the reality is we're more likely to lose players, and the best thing we can do is insert these clauses that make them more similar to loans, in the sense that the buybacks and the sell-on clauses become discounts on their future value, and first refusal means that we still have a hook. And as long as we have a good relationship with them and don't do Levy-style gentlemen's agreements, then we still have a chance of getting them back when they're good.
Richard, I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to go straight in on the 12th minute when, of course, Spurs went 1-0 up. ball in from Archie Gray, who of course wore the captain's armband today. An effort from Solomon was saved by the Auckland goalkeeper. Dane Scarlett followed it up, 1-0 Tottenham. What did you make of the goal?
I actually thought it was good poaching from Dane Scarlett. I mean, he could have been in a different position. He was, a couple of yards out from the 6-yard box, and like all good strikers, he followed up, which was great. Solomon obviously did a good job getting to the back. I don't think Auckland were particularly strong. Going back to the point that Blake made, they're in their off season. You'd have expected a little bit more pressure and a little bit more tracking back, a challenge maybe. So it was almost like an easy tap in, but you have to be in the right place, and Scarlett is often in the right place. He had a couple of headers that were slightly too high and played over the top of him. He tried hard to get some purchase on the ball. But Scarlett, go back to what we were just talking about. Scarlett's another one of those guys that doesn't seem to have raked enough credit with the managers that have been at Tottenham, and therefore he hasn't played very many games. And yet he's often appeared as a fifth or a sixth substitute. So I think they've got to make a decision with Scarlett. He's a poacher, right? He's not a bad poacher either. And they've brought him on to do a job, and he's done jobs in the past. So I think Scarlett would be someone who, the club's got to make a decision on. But he's not bad. He's not bad. I don't think he's a Premiership player. I think he'd be a Championship player. Or he could do a Troy Parrott and do something in the Dutch leagues. But no, he did okay there. And I thought his performance in running around the pitch today was actually not bad at all.
Blake, if you had to make a choice about Dane Scarlett's future, because as Richard said there, and I completely agree with every single word, he's played under multiple different managers, never really had a run in the team. What would you do with Dane Scarlett? Would you offload him? Because we're going to talk about transfers, and so many people say we need a world-class number 9 coming in. So, if you bring in these ready-made players, experienced players, which we all get excited about, we can't lie about that. We all get excited about big signings, statement signings. But where does it leave players like Dane Scarlett?
Well, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because he's had a few loan spells already, and I think he's actually been pretty effective wherever he's gone. He's played a role in when we've played Europa League ties as well, when we've been able to play youth players. Has he had 2 or 3 loans already? I think if it's anything more than 3, you probably do have to look at a permanent deal at some stage. My worry with that is, as Richard said, he's a great poacher. He's a good finisher on goal. There is quality in there. And he's had... This has been a bit of my gripe over the last little while as well, is that we chop and change managers and philosophies so often at our club that a lot of these youth players just fall through the cracks, and they often get poor loan spells. So if it was me, I'd probably be maybe holding on for one more loan. And if he's gone well in January, perhaps bring him back into the squad and talk then. But I worry about Richarlison's fitness. I worry about Solanke's fitness, given his track record over the last 2 seasons, and maybe more holistically, the fitness track record of our whole squad for the last little while, to be honest. But I think you need to have something there as a backup, and whether that's Scarlett, I thought maybe Lancashire was going to be the answer, but I think it might end up being Scarlett if he continues on this run and scoring goals, playing well in pre-season. So,
Dustin, let's come to you. After 22 minutes, there was a cross in from the right-hand side. Dane Scarlett couldn't quite get there. A couple of minutes later, Jamie Donnelly shot just wide from 20 yards. On 35 minutes, a cross in from the left-hand side from Luca Williams-Barnett. That went wide. 36 minutes, Jamie Donnelly with a 40-yard shot. Goalkeeper saved it. In the same minute, Luca Williams-Barnett with a shot that was blocked. That was another long-range effort. A couple of minutes later, Dane Scarlett, good effort, 20 yards out, saved. One thing that I took away from that opening 45 minutes, and you and I have spoken a lot, particularly last season, about Spurs not really having attempts on goal or putting good crosses in. I thought that we were never afraid to shoot today.
Yes, because we don't have a manager that says don't shoot from distance. As we said many times over last season, where I had that entire spreadsheet, or not spreadsheet, I had a slide which was like these are the 11 goals we have conceded from distance that Thomas Frank doesn't think is a high XG chance.
That's not having a pop.
Yeah, but I think the main thing is that it is true that shots from distance are not high percentage chances, but if you don't try them at all, then there's 0% chances. And the function of a shot from distance isn't just trying to score from it, it's also trying to get defenders and midfielders or DMs to come out to block that shot, and that creates space. So if we have a philosophy where we never shoot from distance, we don't have an ability to fish people out of positions, and that's what De Zerbi does. De Zerbi's build-up play is all about fishing people and getting them to lose positional discipline so you can exploit the space that you vacate. So, actually, Chris, this is a good time for the slides. If you can put up this the slides on the screen. So, I think that what happens with the kind of build-up play that we will likely be doing is how we create chances, right? So we would have we have two of the best progressive passing centre-backs in the league now. I think Senesi, as an individual, played more through balls than Spurs did the whole of last season.
Yeah.
And so we have two, and if you include Romero, if we haven't sold him, right, you basically have three centre-backs that are great at hitting through balls over here. And then you've got the players that can exploit that space. You might have strikers that can do build-up, play one touch, and then create chances there. And then on the right flank, you've got Kudus, who can either cut inside and cut it back, or he'll cut in and fashion a chance for himself, or in doing so, pull people out of position that allows him to get a shot or, pass to someone else. You've got Porro, who can do deep crosses, probably the best in the league since Trent Alexander-Arnold left, right? And I think that a big part of it, having Robertson and Porro, also means that one thing you can exploit, which we haven't been able to do, is be able to switch the flanks very quickly. And most of the time, that's where space is these days, because teams are so disciplined and they defend in a deep block, they're very compact and you can't find any space. The only space that you have normally is on the opposite flank. And the slower you are about circulating your possession to the opposite flank, that means it's harder to unpick teams. So the ability of having like Porro and Robertson on either flank to be able to swing in crosses to, either a box crashing midfielder or the opposing winger to attack those chances is another way we can create chances. And then you've got, if you have inverting wing backs that can make runs for box crashing midfielders, you've got Madison and Fernandez picking these passes out. I think these are the areas where we're going to be able to exploit teams a lot more.
Dustin, thanks for that. Richard, let's come to you. Let's talk a little bit about Archie Gray, because he was named captain today. And after the game, Roberto De Zerbi said Archie Gray is a young player, but he is an old player as a mentality, as a performance, as an experience, as a career. What do you think he means by that? And where does Archie Gray fit into the Tottenham Hotspur starting 11? Or is he a squad player still developing and will develop very well under De Zerbi?
That's a really good question, because not by a million miles, but by a good margin, he was the slickest player on the pitch. Certainly in the first half, his ability to just make up ground, nick the ball off of the player, pass it and move, nothing fancy, but absolutely effective, was there for everyone to see. I think without sounding naive or rather gullible, there's an argument, I think, that maybe Archie Gray being made captain above everybody else now would make him the player that we all think he could be. But the problem he's got is if he's not made captain, I don't think he's the first choice midfielder that De Zerbi will pick. And that means that's really hard for him to know what his place is within the team. And being picked as one of the 5 substitutes that you bring on after 60 minutes or 70 minutes or an injury is not really doing him any favours at all. I put it this way, all the talk this week is with Romero on his way out, Maddison possibly being the main candidate as the team captain, maybe Ben Davies as the squad captain. I think if someone was going to be ballsy and put themselves out there on the line, they would pick Gray as the team captain and therefore have to play him almost every game. And I do think he has that character. And the point you're making about what De Zerbi said, he's got an old head on very young shoulders. And he'll have to live or die by the sword if that's the way they decide to go. But it wouldn't bother me that much, I must admit.
Richard, let's stay with you because just before the half-time break, Auckland, their best chance of the game, Brandon Austin made a great save.
Yeah, Austin didn't have a great deal to do. He had a cross early on that he punched out and made good yardage from. But, as a goalkeeper doesn't have much business, you've got to be on your toes. And he watched the ball. He didn't go down too early. He just got his body in the way, in this case, his feet. And it was unspectacular, but it was very, very effective. I'm not sure how much game time Austin's going to get in the future. I think we all realise, all of us are old enough to know that they're picking him as a squad player for the eventuality of us being back in Europe and meeting the criteria for homegrown players. And it's a bit of a shame. But, he hasn't done a great deal wrong, but at the same time, he hasn't broken any records by doing anything spectacular, He's a nice guy. By all accounts, people I've spoken to know him, said he's a really, really good guy, very loyal. And, it's sometimes hard to know how to value loyalty. Does he want to move? I don't know. Should we keep him? I think so for the time being. But that save was, someone who was concentrating, didn't lose focus, didn't want to do anything spectacular, or more importantly, didn't want to do anything stupid. And as a goalkeeper in a former life, that's 9 times out of 10 what your defence want. And I think De Zerbi will be relatively happy with his performance, although he did let a couple of balls squirm under his feet during the game as well.
I blame the jet lag for all of these slight errors.
Absolutely right. Yeah. That and the fact that they were playing on a rugby field as well.
That's it. Blake, let's come to you at half-time. I think most of the crowd and everyone at home expected 11 changes, but they didn't come. No changes at half-time. On the 58th minute, Dane Scarlett had another shot which was deflected over the bar, and then the changes did come on the 62nd minute. 6 changes. Mateus Fernandez, Ben Davies was then given the captain's armband, Conor Gallagher, Tell, Richarlison, Yang, and then the 6 players that went off, Williams, Barnett, Donnelly, Moore, Gray, Scarlett and Keir Matton. Nice to see Mateus Fernandez in a Spurs shirt in front of the Tottenham Hotspur fans for the very first time, because of course last week was behind closed doors and we saw him score a fantastic goal against MK Dons in midweek. What did you make of Fernandez today?
Well, firstly, last week against MK Dons, what a cracking finish, and for him to call it his best goal of his career is pretty big. So I think that's a really good first point to make. But today you could see his class immediately when he came onto the field, spraying passes everywhere again. I think there was a couple that he put out in front of the attackers or the wingers, and we just got onto the end of it straight away. I think that pairing with Tonali throughout the season is going to be really, really hard to break. And then you've obviously got Gallagher behind. It does make me wonder where James Maddison fits into the picture, particularly if we're going to name him as captain. But it was fantastic to see again. It's quite obvious that he's got good quality, and I didn't particularly enjoy the narrative around, we're overspending for someone that's been relegated twice at Southampton and then West Ham. But it's not really any fault of his own. It's a team sport played by 10 other individuals on top of him. So I think that's pretty harsh criticism, but maybe that was Royal fans sort of trying to make it easier on themselves by not landing him, and we were willing to pay. So, look, I was a little bit worried in that first game with such a big fee, but then he's obviously come in over the last 2 games, made a massive impact, and I think that there's big upside to him, absolutely. So, yeah, no concerns here.
Blake, let's stay with you because let's talk about Tottenham's second goal. Richarlison got it after 70 minutes. Good work from Matisse Tell. a lot of people at the moment are saying that we need work in the transfer window in that final third, a replacement for Heung-min Son, and of course a number 9, someone that can play across the forward line and get Spurs goals. With Richarlison, how confident are you, if Richarlison is still a Tottenham Hotspur player come the start of the season, that he can be that player to get the goals on a consistent basis?
Well, it's amazing that we're still talking about replacing Son all down this far down the track. But I think in terms of Richarlison, it does worry me. Firstly, his fitness, and is he still going to be here day one or match week 1 against Brentford away? My gut feeling is saying that yes, he will be, along with Dominic Solanke. And is that the right decision? Probably not. I love Richarlison. I think he helped us and he served his purpose in keeping us up, and it's been a great servant over the last 3 seasons. And take away him being our top goal scorer for this previous season, in a very turgid season, might I add. I get, as a fan, get quite frustrated with his hold-up play. He's not able to trap the ball, and his control isn't quite there. And I don't think that if we want to push on and be, a top 4 club that's in Europe or whatnot, I don't think he's the answer. The only thing I'll say back to Richarlison staying is that we've had such poor fitness with our front 3 at the moment that maybe it does work in our favour to hold on to him for another season, because obviously his contract gets extended by +1 anyway. And then if we want to get a fee for him the following season, then we can reassess. But it's a long-winded answer to your question. I think he will still be in the squad at this time at match week 1. But do I think he should be? I don't think so. I think we should be trying to get a fee for him. Saudi are interested. I'm sure that there was interest initially in Turkey as well. Maybe that's the path that we take. But I'm not confident that he will be gone, because it sounds like he's happy and he's getting what he wants as well.
Dustin, with so much talk about a left winger coming into the football club, where does that leave Matisse Tell? Because it was great work from him today to set up Richie's goal.
Yeah, it was. I think Tell has. I think it was what Plettenberg who was saying that Tell's a striker, he's not a winger, but he's ended up playing more on the left wing for us just because we haven't had Odebear's not been fit or for extended periods of time. And I think that for long periods of our time under Thomas Frank, he was the only player that was trying different things, and it felt like there's a bit of a maverick streak in him that allows him to very confidently keep trying things no matter how often they don't work out. So with Tell, I feel that there is a lot of endeavor, there's a lot of talent, but I don't see long-term a game intelligence and a connection with his teammates, because a lot of it I feel is individually he's trying to win his duels, and then after he does that, then I'll figure out who I can pass to. Whereas I like wingers that kind of have their head up and they're always kind of having a balance of not just battling with their wing back, but they're also saying, how can I battle with my wing back in a way that pulls the centre back towards me and creates space for the striker, and in a way disadvantaging his own chance of scoring to give his striker a better chance, right? And I don't feel that he has that mindset. He has a mindset of, I'm going to win my battle and score a goal, as opposed to, I will sacrifice my goal scoring so that my striker has an easier strike. And that's the kind of chance creator I prefer. That's the kind of person I prefer in the attacking third, because it's a person that prioritizes the team scoring as opposed to their personal glory.
Can I just say something about Richarlison plays like he's like Bambi on ice. He's got no first touch, and you can't lob a ball over the top and get him to run onto it because he's just not that type of player, right? And it's really unfortunate that Odegaard is as injured as he is, because Odegaard I thought was really coming good. Not only was he coming good, but he was almost scoring a decent rate of knots, and he began to remind me a little bit of Sterling when Sterling was playing on the left. Obviously, Sterling was a winger. But Sterling had that ability to beat people and come in and shoot, and Odobert started to play like that. So with Tell, I don't know that we know what Tell's best position is. And like you say, Dustin, he's had to play out on the left wing, and he doesn't know whether he's playing as a striker or as a winger. And so he has the attributes and the traits of one and the other all in the same movement. And like you say, the end result of a striker's endeavour is always to try and score. But from a winger's point of view, it's always to try and beat your man, go to the byline, get the ball over. And he's not actually doing either or really, really well. One thing about Richarlison, I would say, is I think despite all the criticism that he gets, and I like Richarlison for his endeavour, he scores goals. They're ugly, but he scores goals.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said there, Richard, because when Tell actually joined Spurs initially, Sky Germany actually come out and said he is a striker. Tottenham should be playing him as a striker. But you're absolutely spot on. Multiple different Spurs managers now have him on that left-hand side. So if, Roberto De Zerbi has come out and said that he wants two good players in every single position. So would you imagine that Tell would be a backup to somebody else who could perhaps come in this window?
Yeah, quite possibly. I think all the words that you've heard and all the words that have been snuck out suggests that come what may, we're going to buy or try and find another left winger. And if that's the case, I'm not terribly sure that Tell will be your number 9, if you will, your striker. So I think he will be playing second fiddle to either a left winger or back up to either Solanke or Richarlison, who, by the way, I think the club need to make a decision. They need to make a decision. You either keep Solanke or you keep Richarlison, but you can't keep both. And just for what it's worth, I'm sorry, Chris, if you're going to go on to transfers, but if the Lewis family are really interested in making us all really, really excited, and I've got some Turkish friends who are absolutely, behind us on this, we would go and buy Victor Osimhen. I'm sorry, but that guy is an absolute beast. And he scores goals, and he scores goals from everywhere, and he's very, very difficult to track, and he does everything that we want from a striker's point of view, right? So Victor Osimhen's for me.
Right, lastly on the game, and then we will talk about transfers and we will talk about Roberto De Zerbi. On 79 minutes, Roberto De Zerbi gave some more youngsters an opportunity. Byrne and Tyrese Hall coming on, Hardy and Solomon going off. And then on 87 minutes, Kota Takai coming off, as well as Ty Hall, and then Tingy and Russell Denny coming on. Now, talking about transfers, Richard, Roberto De Zerbi, after today's game, talking about transfers, he said, our transfer window is not finished yet. I think we can be happier at the end of this transfer market. I've spoken to the owner, I've spoken to the board, and they want to build a very strong team for this upcoming season to make the base and, for the future to become great again. These are great words. And of course, we have witnessed a very good transfer window so far. But like I always say, judge the transfer window at the very end of the transfer window. So we are all living in hope that we can get some top players in the final third position. Before I ask you about transfers, I just want to talk about Roberto De Zerbi and give you each the opportunity to talk about Roberto De Zerbi and how excited are you by this upcoming season. Richard, I'm going to start with you because I'm going to play this clip as well whilst you're talking, because you were of course in the stadium, Eden Park, yesterday for the open training session. We both witnessed this, the way that he went over to every single player. He spoke to every single player. He gave them the instructions. He told them what he demands. And I tell you what, I have always been very impressed with Roberto De Zerbi, even when he wasn't at Spurs. He has impressed me by keeping Spurs in the Premier League, of course. And, when I watch him in these training sessions, when I watch him with individual players and his instructions that he's giving, he stopped the play so many times during that training session yesterday to make sure that his players understood fully exactly what he expected. It's great to see, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we both commented after the training session just how involved he was, and he commands the players in such a way that I think he's testing whether they comprehend what he's trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So he's not giving them, straightforward instructions and saying, you're a robot, only do this. Do you understand what we're trying to do here? And when somebody cocks up, when someone doesn't deliver properly, he'll stop the play and he'll explain exactly what he wants them to do. And the pennies are beginning to drop. You can see the positioning of the players, the way they listen to him, right? I also like the fact that he's quite prepared to push people to one side and say, get out of my way, you're not supposed to be here. This is what I want you to do. And this is the reason I want you to run there. I want the ball at this pace. And, someone who can command a pitch, a half a pitch, or a training session like that demands the utmost respect. The danger that I think we may fall into if we're not too careful is we eulogize just how brilliant he is. And he just may need a bit more time than the first 10 games to actually show us what he's made of.
Yeah. Blake, I think it's pretty obvious that no one's going to get away with, putting in half-hearted performances or making any mistakes.
Absolutely right. And my opinion on RDZ, the minute he kept us in the Premier League, we should have built him a statue. No, not quite, but he did he worked wonders. Honestly, that guy to come in with 7 games, that after the Forest loss, I genuinely thought we were going down. When we lost 3-0 at home to Forest, I thought we're done. Like, there's no way we're going to stay up here. And he came in and I think he got laughed out the building at a press conference because he said we're going to win 7 games. And that was like the injection that we needed in this squad. It was bringing the belief back, making sure that we're on the front foot again. We're playing the way that we should be. Additionally, instilling belief and making these guys feel like they're invincible. That's coaching 101, in my opinion. You've got to make players believe that they can do it. And I don't think it was so much that Thomas Frank didn't believe in his players, but the way he played was so negative and there was such little risk being taken, players were then afraid to make decisions. That's my take on it. But as for him being such a hands-on coach as well, I can see exactly what he's doing there on that footage where he's stopping. It's a great philosophy in coaching that's called stopping in real time. So if a player makes a mistake and cocks up, as Richard was explaining before, he's not afraid to jump in and say, right, stop, freeze where you are. What just happened? And he'll put the question back on the players. And that is a great comprehension tool that you can use as a coach. And that says to me that he's first class. He's absolutely first class in what he does. He's hands-on. He's a great communicator. And I think he's crystal clear in what he wants from the players from start to finish of every session. And you can hear, and you heard in the game today as well, barking instructions at every player. Very good, getting in their face. Fantastic. That's what we've needed for such a long time, is just getting someone to have that energy and that positivity and making players believe that they can do it. Is he a bit hot-headed at times from what we've heard at his previous clubs? Perhaps, but that tells me that he's passionate as well. And that's what we've lacked in our club for such a long time. It has got to be passion and for the badge, and you can see that he just bleeds the club already. And by all accounts, when he first got to the club, he was raving about how good the facilities are and how much potential there is and how much buy-in he has from ownership, because they're going to fully back him, as we've already seen, with work to do. So that's my 2 cents. I think he's a brilliant coach. We heard Sandro talking about him before he signed as well, saying how he worked under him as an assistant coach. A Spurs legend saying that about somebody coming in, I think is nothing but positive. So yeah, really exciting times and very excited for the season ahead.
Dustin, one thing that I really noticed during the training session yesterday is the fact that Roberto De Zerbi wants every single pass to be right. And he even pulled up Brandon Austin on a couple of occasions, wanting that first pass from the goalkeeper right at the back. He wants that first pass to be played right. He wants that perfect pass from the very start. So how excited are you about Roberto De Zerbi going forward?
You remember when I was analysing the Liverpool game like in the middle of last season, and I was telling you that I was playing the footage at like 4 times speed, and what I noticed very clearly was that with Liverpool, there was almost never a misplaced pass. Meaning that the pass wasn't just going to the player and they didn't have to like, oh, I have to track back to get the pass. But it was like, if it was played to feet, it was played to feet at pace where it was impossible for the opposition to intercept. If it was played into space, it was played into space at the right pace so that they get it in stride on their strong foot. That's the kind of basics that like a top coach really gets players to focus on. And you know that the top players, they're like, oh, I play this pass with top spin so that, you know, it reaches the player so that he has an easier way of receiving the pass. And one thing that I noticed was that even with our youth team players, there were players that were playing that well. So like Tingy came on only on the 87th minute. But what I noticed from him was that his passing was really, really crisp. He was firing balls into like narrow corridors of space at speed without bobbling around, and it was getting straight to players, and it felt like it's something that had been drilled. And I think part of the reason a lot of the youth team players were playing as well was that they absorb it a lot more, they take it on board, and they're really applying it. So him prioritizing the pass, especially for the press, is very important for him, because a misplaced pass means that the opportunity you created by pulling a player out, you misplace the pass and the opportunity is gone. So I think that passing quality is one of the things that, if you look at our performances last season, that was the thing that I noticed the most. How often we would be either misplacing passes and turning over possession, or we would have momentum, but then we would misplace the pass and the chance is gone. They're back in position. So the fact that he is micromanaging and getting those details right, it's absolutely what we need, because it's that lack of quality that hurt us so much last season.
Richard, let's come to you. After the game, De Zerbi was talking about James Maddison and other players, and as I mentioned right at the very start, players like Mickey van der Ven, Robertson, Sandro Tonali, Van Hecke, Maddison and Solanke, they all sat this one out. Talking about Maddison, he said he's not working. He hasn't been working in the last 5 days, like Destiny Udogie, but they don't have a big problem, just to stay focused, and we don't want to take any risks. For the next friendly game against Sydney, maybe we'll be playing with Sandro Tonali. With others, maybe we have got to see. How excited are you by seeing all of these players back in the squad properly? Because, of course, the World Cup as well, we've got more players, to come back. When every player is in the squad available for De Zerbi, how excited are you for the season?
Yeah, very excited. I think one of the problems we're going to have is if no one's going to be match fit, right? So here's the thing: they come back from injury, they're going to take 5 to 7 games before they get match fit, and you've then got to beg the question: are you going to persevere with someone who doesn't get, say, 90 minutes times 5 or times 7 to actually prove themselves? And even if you did give them that amount of time, if they didn't reach top speed and actually make things happen, you wouldn't pick them for the 8th game or whatever. So look, I fear for Maddison. I fear for Maddison in as much as we have some other options now. I think last season we were all craving for him to come back as being the talisman that we've been missing. We put Kulusevski to one side, and I know everyone liked Kudus, but Kudus was going through a bit of a poor patch before he got injured anyway. I was at that game in London and I saw the injury. And when he came off, I thought, well, maybe that's not such a bad loss after all for a while. Obviously didn't want him to be injured for this long. But Maddison was our talisman, and all the guys around me at the stadium that day were saying, look, we need him back as soon as possible. I'm not terribly sure if we didn't have him match fit and we didn't pick him, we would be that worried now with Tonali and Fernandes. That also puts a lot of pressure on them, because they got to know our system, they got to know the way we play. And to go back to Dustin's point, one of the things about the discipline that De Zerbi and the passing, I think, engenders into players is you don't play the percentage pass or pass up around someone's ears or up around their shoulders or up around their waist, where they need 2 touches to control the ball so they can pass it on. You can't have quick passing, quick movement balls that are slick across the ground if you've got to take 2 touches to get it under control in the first place. And we've been guilty of that. Now, the guys like Tonali and Fernandes are footballers. They play the ball on the deck, right? And they are good at finding spaces and direct passes and splitting defenders or midfielders or what have you. I think Maddison's slightly different. I think we got excited with Maddison because he made things happen. But now I think we've got 2 players. I am very excited. We've got 2 players who could potentially do a slightly better and different job for the team.
Last question and last thing to cover is the transfer window. Richard, I'm going to start with you. What have you made of the transfer window so far? And as we have all said as Spurs fans over the years, particularly going back to Mauricio Pochettino saying you've got this wonderful mansion, you need to put the furniture in it. Well, we're finally getting that upmarket furniture in the stadium, in the likes of Tonali and Matheus Fernandes. With the amount of money that we've spent, he clearly wants top players now in that final third area. Are we going to get?
I think so. I think one of the problems we've got now is some of the purchases that we may make may be short-term purchases. I think Robertson's a short-term purchase, as an example. Senesi, I don't think anybody sees him as the number 1 centre back. So, with the statistics that Dustin showed us about Senesi's ability to bring the ball forward, do you need that, or do we want to play that style of football that suits him every week? And the possibility is no, if you've got Van der Ven and Van Hecker. So what you've actually got now is you've got 2 defenders from the same country, a bit like Vertonghen and Alderweireld, 6-7 years ago. They know each other from an international point of view. They know the Premier League, and they'll be playing next to each other. And once they get that right, we could have a very, very strong partnership in the back there. So I like that. I think, go back to what I said before, the Tonali and Fernandes gives us a slightly different way of playing progressive football going forward. So I'm not quite as worried as say not having Maddison. I do think our focus around strikers is going to be really, really important. I do think we need a world. We've lost Kane, we've lost Son, both world-class players. We never replaced Bale when we lost Bale with world-class players. We had bit players. We all know about the seven players we signed. And no disrespect to any of them, they didn't actually do the job. So we might as well go and get a superstar. The last time we were in real trouble and got a superstar was Klinsmann, and that was an awful long time ago. I think we need to go and buy somebody like that. That's my personal opinion. I'm very excited with what they've done. I think they're good quality. I think 1 or 2 of them are short-term purchases to do a job. But it's like the fundamental building blocks of how we're going forward now. And my last point is going to be what one of the guys said about building the team. It takes a little while to build a team, and it takes a little while for everyone to know what the best mode of play is. So I think, to your point, Chris, about Roberto De Zerbi, I think it's really, really important that he is dead clear and he gets what he wants. Puts an awful lot of pressure on him, but with the transfers he's got so far, I think he's made a really good start.
Richard, I do agree. I think that some people do need to be patient, but is it the sort of thing to say to Spurs fans, particularly after the last couple of seasons we've had in league competition, particularly in May, it was so close to Spurs going down to the championships, and now all of us want the players in. We want that perfect window. Spurs are after, all of us fans are after that perfect 10 out of 10 window.
Yeah, I think one of the problems is if we hear the word on building a project, I'm going to shoot someone, because we've had project after project after project. And also setting realistic expectations on what we can achieve. I do think we will be better, and I think we will be better quickly. Whether we can sustain that over 38 games, obviously, plus the League Cup and the FA Cup, we haven't got any Europe. But, we should, with one game a week, roughly, we should improve. And he'll have plenty of time to put his point of view over and his style of play over. And if they don't pick up on that, they shouldn't be in the team. Simple.
Yeah. It was interesting what Ledley King said last night as well. Bring Harry Kane back, but I don't think that. Sadly, I don't think there's going to be any chance of that happening because it looks highly likely that he's going to be signing a new deal at Bayern Munich. Blake, let's come to you on the transfers. Fabrizio Romano keeps saying every week, ever since back in May time and even before that last summer about Savinho, he seems very confident that Spurs are going to get this deal done for Savinho. One, would you be happy with that? And two, what else do Spurs need for it to be a 10 out of 10 window for you?
Yeah, it's been a big window already, of course. And I think what I really was pleased about throughout the transfer window so far is we got the big business done early, because those deals do take time for it to take fruition. And to eclipse our transfer record twice in a row within 24 hours, I think is true ambition. And that's what we've lacked for such a long time. So to start the window off, I thought we were absolutely brilliant. It's the irony of it is we were always with two prolific goal scorers in Son and Kane, and now they're the two positions that we need to fill urgently. so it's like we've gone and pleasingly we have done it methodically. We've started with the back half, moving into the midfield, and then of course into the front third. But that is the final piece of business to do, and Savinho fits that exactly how we want to do it. So I think 60 is the demanding price that we're hearing from Man City. I think that's probably a little bit too high. I thought he had a hit and miss season last season, but under the coaching and tutelage of someone like RDZ, I see Savinho coming into a great system. So I think he'd be a really good one to get. As for the striker, it is a unicorn, and Ledley's absolutely right. Maybe we should try and coax Harry back. He must be sitting in Munich at the moment thinking, why was this ambition not shown when I was banging in goals and going for the Premier League record? But such is life, and that's what's been to pass. But I'd love to see him back in a Spurs shirt personally. I don't see it happening, but of course we can all dream. The number 9 position is one that we have to really focus on, as well as the left wing. They're the next two pieces of business. That's the 10 out of 10 window once we get those two things done. Savinho, of course, on the left, and yeah, maybe it is someone real big money, or Krupi Jr. that hasn't even been bought up yet. Someone that can play on the left. I know Bournemouth don't want to part ways with him, but the price is right for anyone, right? We saw that with Harry Kane. So maybe it is time that we just said, right, here's another 90 million. Thank you very much. We'll be taking Krupi. And if I'm not mistaken, is Musa Sissoko his player agent? Yeah. That should be enough to get it over the line there, right there. Musa Sissoko, what a name. But yeah, that would be my dream window, is that we finally fill those left wing and striker positions, and then we kick on. And it's a very, very exciting season, gentlemen.
Dustin, lastly with you about transfers. When we heard all the rumours about that we were interested in Matheus Fernandes, most Spurs fans said that's never going to happen because, of course, what happened with Morgan Gibbs-White and Eze and, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we were linked with Tonali, many people said, or most people said, that's never going to happen. Spurs are never going to spend £100 million on a player. So whoever Spurs are linked with now, do you have so much more confidence? Because I'll tell you what I do.
Well, I suspect what actually happened was that ENIC decided we're suddenly going to change the way we do things, and they gave Levy one last window, like, okay, you go and do it. And which is why when we heard we were going in for Morgan Gibbs-White and Eze, we're like, oh wow, are we actually doing this? And then Levy did Levy things, which is, oh yeah, but let's amortize this, let's put in these performance bonuses, and then these two players go, are you actually serious? And went somewhere else. I suspect that's why he got fired. And now we're seeing what happens when you go to a player and you don't futz around with the deal. It's not, you can call it getting your pants pulled down, but I'm all for pants-free summer. If that's what we're doing, I'm podcasting only from the belly up, right? So I'm all for pants-free summer, right? And if that means that we're going to be signing all of these players, and a lot of it is being serious about the offer and not jerking them around and making them feel like you're not actually serious because they've got options. So if you're going for players of this ilk, they have their agent in their ear saying, "Oh, Milan is also interested. Oh, Barca is also interested. Madrid's also interested." And time is of the essence. I feel a lot more confident now because having done these deals earlier, and even with the earlier deals, even if some of them were free transfers, they were positions we knew we needed strengthening. So it's even the pace of doing it fast, right? So Nessie was a free transfer, Robertson was a free transfer, but we knew we needed a left back cover, and we knew we needed centre backs. So the fact that we went out and did it fast, we were still happy because it just means that we get stuff done before the World Cup, because we knew that it would be hard to sign people during the World Cup, and we still got Van Hecker over the line during the World Cup. So this really indicates that things are changing and we're a lot more serious about closing deals now. As for the kinds of players that we're being linked with, the fact that we're being linked with Junior Krupi and everything, it just indicates that we're not going for someone that's going to be good in a few years. We're going with, who's going to do it now. And I suspect the reason for this is there's no better time to go for the league. Leicester finished 17th the season before, and then they won the league the next season. And we can look at the fact that we don't have Europe and go, oh, that sucks. But it also means we're playing one game a week. We've got a lot less games to worry about. We have, for the first time, a City in transition, a Liverpool in transition, a Chelsea in transition, and Arsenal with injury problems. So most of the teams that you would suspect would normally be blockers for us, they have new coaches. In Arsenal's case, they have like long-term injuries to their centre back, right? So, if you don't go for it now, when are you going to go for it? So, I would say that if we sign a proper left winger and we sign a proper striker, and right now what we're doing is we should be signing to bench our existing players. We shouldn't be signing for squad, right? Make our existing first 11 the squad, because when Arsenal won the league last season, it was painful to go, oh, someone's coming off. Who are they bringing on as a substitute? Hincapié or like Leandro Trossard. And like, these players would not normally be substitutes for other top half teams. But the fact that their squad is so stacked that they can bring them on to close out games was the reason they won the league. And that's the position we need to be in. We shouldn't worry as much about, I don't know who will play. Doesn't matter. Compete with each other, because title winning teams have squads where players have to compete with each other.
So you're saying, Dustin, that we could go from 17th to 17th to 1st?
Leicester did. Literally, Leicester did it the season that they beat us to the title, right? And not having to play Europe is one part. Being able to spend money, not having to play Europe, having most of your major rivals in transition, there's no better time to try.
Right. I did say that this is going to be an hour podcast, and it's now nearly an hour and 40, so apologies to all of you. Dustin, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for all of your input, and great to talk to you again.
Cheers.
Thank you. And Blake, thank you so much. And I will see you. I'm literally about to get on the flight to Sydney in a couple of hours. That's how close it all is. So I will see you in a couple of days. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant, Chris. Thanks for having me on, everyone. Great panel tonight. Pleasure to meet you, Richard. Great to be back on with you, Dustin. And Chris, see you in Sydney for a hell of a good time.
Thank you so much, Blake. Look forward to it. And Richard, I'm so sorry for keeping you for so long. And this is what happens, isn't it? You know, when we start talking about Spurs, we could literally talk about Tottenham all night.
Absolutely. Great to be with you guys. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure having you over here, Chris. And like I said to you before we parted ways earlier, don't be a stranger and come back soon, eh?
Thank you, Richard. Pleasure meeting you. And as I said earlier, you'll be a friend for life now, and no doubt you'll be a regular on this channel when we need more guests. So thank you so much. Blake, Dustin, Richard, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for watching. And I'm off to Sydney now, so I will see you there. And we will see you again very soon for another edition of the Spurs Chat Podcast. Thanks so much, and come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.